So without further ado, let me go ahead and say a special good afternoon to a number of you already hooked on the live this afternoon. I am again riding solo this afternoon. Let me say a special good afternoon to Paula Celestine, wherever she is. A special good afternoon as well to Marceline Edwards. But this afternoon, I'm riding solo this afternoon. And so wherever these people are, I want to say a special good afternoon to them. It is indeed a very interesting week thus far in Dominica. Lots of rain, lots of water, but we say thank God for that. As Mr. Adam Harris told me a while ago, the farmers are happy. They too had some water in their neck of the wood, that is in Guyana. But without further ado, as I said, let me move across now to open up Mr. Harris's mic so that he can basically have a hi-end greetings to you. And then he will give his introduction statement and maybe just introduce himself to you, the listening and the audience. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. A pleasant good afternoon to you, sir.
And the same to you. I heard you talk about me introducing myself. Yes, I've been around for a very long time. I've been a journalist. I studied at Mona way back in the 1970s. I came home. I worked with the Ministry of Information. Then I went into mainstream media, working with the Guyana Chronicle for a number of years. I was also editor of the PNC newspaper, The New Nation, for a while, back to the Chronicle. And then I went into private media, the television, evening news, started my own Prime News. And at present, I mean, I'm slowing down. I have an online paper called Guyana Post Online. And I have a news program on a local television station here named Channel 9. That's it in a nutshell, really, for me. Nothing much to shout about.
Nothing more to shout about. I like very humble people. But yes, thank you again, Mr. Harris. That is for basically opening up and giving us a little more about yourself so that persons listening and watching make a little more contact with you. As you know, if you don't make contact with certain persons, then what they might say to you might go amiss. So thank you very much for that opening salvo, as it were. Mr. Harris, let us get right into it. And again, from the Civic Vibes team and the number of persons that are already glued on live, on their behalf, I want to tell you thank you for taking time of your Sunday afternoon to come and speak to us from Guyana's perspective as to the unfolding conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Straight off the bat, in terms of a question to you, sir, to get the conversation going. What are some of the thoughts? What are some of the sentiments of the people of Guyana that you're hearing on the ground as it pertains to that unfolding conflict?
Well, we start off from the point of view that we have a conflict with Venezuela. We settled our territorial issue way back in 1899. And one of the Venezuelan representatives wrote a letter and he told them to wait until he died before they opened it. They opened it and he claimed that the border was gerrymandered to suit the English at the time. And Venezuela held on to that. They're still claiming all of Essequibo, calling it the reclamation zone. And when we became independent in 1966, Venezuela became more strident because Guyana hasn't got an air force, it has nothing. I mean, so I suppose it was an issue of Venezuela being able to just jump on Guyana, knowing that it couldn't get a response as such. There was an island that was divided straight down the middle. Venezuela took that island and we couldn't do anything about it. It's still in their possession. That's the Ancocco Island. So from that perspective, we can always sympathize with the underdog. I mean, Russia is a huge power. Ukraine is much smaller than Russia. Ukraine's military would be no match for the Russian military. But from what I've been reading, the Ukrainians had home court advantage, if you want to call it that. So they used that to good advantage. And what little mechanisms they had, they were able to inflict some damage. We are seeing the war largely through the eyes of the Western media. And we know that the Western media is overwhelmingly supportive of Ukraine, as most of us would be. You know, we always support the underdog. So when the West tells us something, we look at it, and we in Guyana have no way of independently verifying the information. We had a protest outside the Russian embassy, and the Russian called in 3 of the protest leaders and spoke with them. They haven't told us what the discussion was about, but that was the only protest, open protest that we had. A lot of people would be talking about it. And if you look at our local newspapers, the news is what is coming out of the Western press. So they would be reporting, you know, things like Putin bombs Ukrainian hospital, Putin bombs civilian, that kind of thing. Huh? So we're reporting that. I'm not saying that that isn't true, but we can only see the war through the eyes of the Eastern media. And that's how it is. Some of us got upset when we saw the video coming out of the way the Ukrainians were treating Black people, you know, and some of us backed away and said, well, you know, it's the white people war. We look at the reaction to the refugees from the Ukraine. No refugee tents, no closed borders. They walk in. Even Canada is saying, look, come, we have jobs for you. Now, I mean, we West Indians have relatives in Canada. None of them could leave our shores and be guaranteed a job in Canada for obvious reasons. But the Ukrainians have that luxury. So when we take those things into consideration, we realize that our sentiments for Ukraine would be softened by the general treatment the Ukrainians get when compared to us.
Yes, indeed. That is very fascinating, a comment that you just made, Mr. Harris, in terms of a lot of Black people were very irate, for want of a better term, as to some of the treatment that the Black people in that country, they were meted out with, especially when they had to seek refuge. So yes, I can see where you.
And that isn't, you know, that's only one part of it. When you look at the countries, I mean, the Ukrainians were able to land in Florida. You know, they're just about, you know, as some reporter said, these are not our ordinary refugees. These are blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. So refugees are generally people Black like me. That's the concept of refugees in the Western world. And blue-haired, white-eyed Christians can't be considered refugees. So that's one aspect of the war that with which I'm not satisfied, all right? But I do sympathize with the people of Ukraine. A lot of them have been killed, and you know, they're fighting within their means. I see people leaving wherever they are, safe bases, and going back to Ukraine to fight. That's nationalism, and I respect them for that. I appreciate them for that.
Yes, indeed. As we start to go a little deeper in the conversation, a number of persons are now tuning in. So let me just give those persons an idea of the conversation we're having this afternoon. We are speaking to a very formidable journalist out of Guyana. That is Mr. Adam Harris by name. And like we did last week, where we looked at the unfolding conflict between Ukraine and Russia and gave it through the perspectives of Dominica and Neda, Mr. Harris's presence here this afternoon is simply put to give us the perspective of that war, that unfolding war that is, through the lens of Guyana people. Mr. Harris, you made a point a while ago, which I just want you to just go back there, because I did not catch the name of that little area that you said Venezuela took over from you, the Guyanese people. So in a way, there's some similarity as to what is going on between Russia and Ukraine at this time.
Yeah, it's an island in the western part of the country. You know, there's a river that acts as a boundary between Guyana and Venezuela. And the island is Ankoko, A-N-K-O-K-O. Now that island was split down the middle. Venezuela had one part and we had another part. And in the 1980s, Venezuela just took the whole island. We had some troops there and they evacuated and they came back onto the mainland. So we know what it is to be invaded, if you want to call it that. Invasion doesn't mean that you have to get into the capital. Just take your property and that's it. So we experienced that. And from that point of view, we can understand the position in Ukraine.
Okay. That is very good that you made that statement, in that a lot of persons, when they hear about Guyana, for instance, they don't think, or they did not have a clue as to what you just said in terms of a fact, so that you guys could in some way, shape or form there's some similarity as to what, though it may not be in the gravity in terms of bombs dropped and bullets flying, but you had your share and still going through that scenario where land invasion is concerned with Venezuela and Guyana. In terms of moving on, we know, those of us who study Venezuela, those of us who look at Venezuela, as this war continues, there's the need now for, especially by the Western world, to be on the search for oil-related products. Guyana is a country we know that is rich in these resources. What are the powers that be in Guyana saying as we speak in terms of maybe positioning Guyana to benefit in a positive way from that now quote unquote manhunt for oil and these other natural resources?
You know, the first thing I would like people to recognize is that Guyana is in no way in control of that oil. ExxonMobil came, drilled, found oil. So for all practical purposes, ExxonMobil is controlling that oil. Guyana gets a royalty and a percentage of the oil. All told, whatever comes up, Guyana would get about 14% at this time. Perhaps 20, 30 years down the road, we get much more when Exxon hands over. But we get 14%. We have no say in how the oil is being distributed, except for the share that we get. We sold the very first shipment to some bidders, and we sold a shipment to India. That much I know. I don't know who is going to get the other one. We get about 5 shipments a year. So in the grand scheme of things, we can't, talk about being a major player in the oil industry. The major player is ExxonMobil. We can only think about what's coming to Guyana. And what's coming to Guyana, we're begging that the people benefit and it isn't wasted. And but that's another discussion.
That's totally another discussion in and out by itself. Thank you for that perspective in terms of when you said that Guyana is in shape or form in charge. Can you just be a little more explicit when you say that Guyana, because the basin is in Guyana, ExxonMobil is doing the drilling, the exploration in Guyana. Just give us a little more meat on that as to when you said that Guyana as a country, You as a people,
Yeah.
you are not in charge of your resource.
All right. Yeah, let me go back a bit. We started looking for oil in this country 40, 50 years ago. And ExxonMobil found oil in 2015, I think, by a stroke of luck. They had two more, they were drilling and coming up empty and all of that. And they had two wells to drill. And had they drilled the other well and come up empty, they would have pulled out. For some reason, they drilled the other one and they cannot. And then they started to find a lot of oil. They pay Guyana for the block that they use. It's like you living in a rented house. You pay your rent, but what you do in that house is your business.
Oh, okay.
So Exxon is paying its rent, and it's paying Guyana, according to the contract, what it thinks Guyana should get. But Guyana can't dictate to Exxon, say, look, you can't sell your oil to Dubai, or you can't sell your... No, we can't tell ExxonMobil that. ExxonMobil is a global power. As a matter of fact, they've been taught ExxonMobil is so big that if the government decides to attack ExxonMobil, ExxonMobil can actually topple the government, as happened in some other countries. So that's when I say we have no control. We don't have any control over the oil. ExxonMobil has the control. All we get is whatever money is due to us from it.
Very, very interesting indeed. At least I learned something this afternoon. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Harris. In terms of going back to the war itself, is Guyana as a country experiencing any economic hardship at this time?
Yes. As a matter of fact, even before the Ukrainian conflict, inflation had jumped. And, you know, the government was saying, well, look, we are a victim of what you call the supply chain thing. You know, the Americans were talking about ships off the port, you can't offload them, so goods weren't coming in and all of that. And since we were importing a large volume of stuff, we were in the same bind. So when the supply chain is disrupted, shortages begin to appear. So prices started to go through the roof. And we have some interesting people down here. Once the prices go up, everybody who is selling capitalizes on it. I can tell you that we grow plantains and ground provision and all of that here. We grow green vegetables, you know, tomato, all kinds of things. You would be amazed at how these prices jumped. We were paying, for example, for a pound of tomatoes or tomatoes, depending on which part of the world they come from, we were paying the equivalent of $2.50 US cents. In Dominican term, you use Eastern Caribbean country, all right?
Yes.
So we would have been paying $3.50 for a pound of tomatoes. That's how unscrupulous our vendors had become. Plantains grown here, they were sold at, I'm trying to do the computation. They sold at about 40 US cents a pound. Am I right? Just about. Yeah, no, for 4 US cents a pound, that would be 80 Guyana dollars. All right. And in your currency, it might have been 5 US cents a pound for plantains. Though the same pound of plantain earlier this year jumped to $1.50 US, or about $2.20 Eastern Caribbean currency. And that's how it was. Now, salaries didn't move. So you could imagine the hardships on people. And a lot of people then decided, you know, because the pay, you can't afford to buy food. Transportation costs started to go up and everything, and people were hit hard. So a lot of ordinary households began to put some seeds in the backyard. So at least you were cushioning the effect of the price changes. When the war in Ukraine broke, that was another issue because gasoline, and we import gasoline, gasoline jumped. We are now paying, oh boy, between $5 and $6 a gallon for gasoline. Now, right away, you can see where we're going with that. Electricity, fortunately, hasn't gone up. Water, well, we don't know. I might see it in the bill in due course without them making an announcement. But yes, economically, a lot of things. The prices just went up. People who used to jump in a taxi at the drop of a hat are now walking or using the mini taxi because the cost is too high. But on the other side, I can't imagine. I still see crowds of people going to KFC. I don't know how they can afford it, but that's the reality, my brother. Yes, things are hit hard. The prices have gone up, and so a lot of us, if we don't have to go out, we just stay at home, and relax. You know, you do what you have to do. You can't just go out there with no money and hope to God that you can compete with the other people who to whom money means little or nothing.
So Mr. Harris, let me understand fully what you're saying. This situation, example, for example, price gouging that you spoke of, inflation that you spoke of. I just want it to be clear, crystal clear in our listeners' mind that these situations happened at the genesis of or meaning when the world got news of that, or that has been an ongoing situation in
it started before the war in Ukraine. You know, toward the end of last year, if you remember, September, October, because of the pandemic, they said in North America, ships and all of that could not offload. And then they had a shortage of bus drivers to transport from the wharves to whichever outlet they had to go to and all of that. Eh? So we were caught up in that. So the rising prices hit us. Construction material, everything went through the roof. And that was before the Ukraine war. When the Ukraine war hit, the prices went up even more. And as I said, local farmers and others began to take advantage. And I suppose they would argue that they had to pay higher prices too. So they got to make money to pay for their higher priced goods. Though with the little bit of rain and what have you be getting, produce prices came down a bit. So locally produced foods have come down a bit. All right, still expensive, but the prices have come down. Bread, that has gone up. And that went up because Ukraine and Russia were supposed to be among the largest wheat producers in the world. So our flour company here claimed that they were battling a 40% increase in raw material during last year. And this past week, they raised the price of flour by 14%. Now, you can imagine that 14% will probably reach 25 or 30% by the time the bread reaches your table, because the baker is going to put on his markup and the vendor is going to put on his markup. So you can see what's happening there. And that is a direct offshoot of the Ukraine war.
in terms of the price increase, for example, in bread, as you just noted a while ago, I just want to kind of clarify that who initiated this increase? Is it the government, the policymakers, or the business owners themselves took it on themselves, seeing that they have to combat now or deal with the rising flour?
It's the business owners. We don't have any price controls here. Okay. You know, if I want to sell something, I fix my price. The government can't control the price. We had price controls way back when. We don't have price controls. So the business owners or a group of them would get together and they determine the price of things. So as it stands, with the flour mill, for example, that's the only flour mill in Guyana. So the operators decided, look, we are going to raise our prices. There is nothing you can do. However, the government is going to benefit because there is a VAT, value added tax, of 14%. So every time the flour mill increases, the government is going to get money too because the 14% increases. 14% of $20 is one, 14% of $40 is another. So the government is going to benefit from that. And that's our situation here.
We too in Dominica, in terms of the prices of certain commodities, and we will stick to bread for a while. The price of whole wheat flour, for example, in Dominica has gone up. And so that's increase in price has been passed on to the consumers. Right about now, we have a 25 cents increase on the price of flour in Dominica. That is the whole wheat flour, that is. And so you guys in Guyana and we in Dominica, we are sharing some of the effects, for want of a better term, as to that continues in Guyana. You spoke about the VAT being 14%. Just for curiosity's sake, because there's a question that I want to ask you after. How long has that 14% VAT in Guyana been established? For how long?
Okay.
How long
it was 16% back. VAT was introduced in, I think it's 2006 or 2007. Off the top of my head, I really didn't do a lot of homework on this for this program.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. It was 14%. In 2015, when the new government came in, the government lowered it to 14%. But you know what happened? That 14% did not come back to the buyer because the businessman, let's say with VAT, simple example, a screwdriver, he might be selling it for $5 with the 20% on VAT. When you reduce it to 14%, you would expect to get a reduction in the price of the screwdriver. The man ain't giving up his $20. So that wasn't passed on to the consumers. And there are some products that are exempt from VAT, medical supplies and things like that. But there are others that would attract VAT.
Okay. All right, that's fine in terms of clarifying that, because we too in Dominica, we share that similar scenario in that we have on our books in Dominica where we pay a VAT, and that VAT, it was introduced by this Dominica Labour Party government sometime back in the early 2000s, 2003, roughly about it, 2002, 2003. And the Prime Minister then, that he's now deceased, Honorable Pierre Charles.
Yeah, yes.
He introduced that VAT situation in Dominica, whereby he said that the country, after advice from like the IMF and organization, like said that the country needed that kind of VAT stabilization program. And he gave the the country, his word at the time as Prime Minister, that once Dominica would have been, quote unquote, would have gotten over that period, then he gave the Dominican people the surety that we would have gone back to quote unquote normal times. But from since then, that 15% VAT, Mr. Harris, has been on our backs. Pierre Charles unfortunately passed. And I remember him clearly well saying he gave the Dominican people an idea, a window as to the next 3 years. We'll go through that, what he called then the austerity measures, and we would have been over with that. But the now leader of the country, Roosevelt Skerrit, basically did not honor and still is not in a position to honor his predecessor commitment to the people. And it is like that VAT, that 15% VAT that we have been under since 2003 thereabout, we're in 2022 now. So he's not looking at that in terms of a decrease. He's not talking about it. He's not going back there to say, okay, that was what former Prime Minister said, and let us look in that direction to see if we can at least give you, the people of Dominica, a little leverage where that 15% VAT is concerned. And so a lot of persons in Dominica, they are just going their merry way. It's like that have come to us in Dominica now as if, well, that is now part and parcel of life. So it is very interesting that you brought up that point. So I just wanted to throw that out to you as well, so that you could at least get an idea. We in Dominica have been going through, still going through in terms of the VAT situation in Dominica. I recognize you said it's 14% over there. We are 15%, but maybe what, 17 and more years, 18 years plus in that situation. As we continue on though, as we continue on read that situation, I just want to ask you, maybe you're not the right person to give me those answers, but you're a formidable journalist in Guyana, and so you may be hearing certain things as to the fallout of the war in Ukraine. What is the government proposing, or what are they looking to do in terms of having the people of Guyana that effects be lessened against them as to their livelihood? Anything in the pipeline?
Not that I know, not that I know. I know that the government says it's undertaking some infrastructure programs, and everything seems to be focused on Guyana. There isn't any looking outside for, you know, the Ukraine thing. We have been approaching some of the international lending agencies. Just last week, we had a Guyana company, what they call a shore-based company. Shore-based because it's dealing with the vessels from Exxon way offshore, and they would come in to get cleaned, repaired, fitted, that kind of thing. They wanted a lot of money to offset previous loans, and the IDB vetoed it. No money for that. So as a direct government involvement in the Ukraine issue, I don't know that there is anything like that, nothing at all.
Nothing at all. All right, thanks for that. Let me just turn to our listening audience and viewing audience. Those of you listening and watching on that very important conversation happening here right now on Civic Vibes, please don't forget to plug in your comments on the live. If you have a question to ask of Mr. Harris, he is here now, virtually that is, and he will do all in his power. So please, as I said, plug in your comments here. I will try my very best to ask Mr. Harris those questions of yours so that he could give you an answer, so that you too can be part and parcel of conversations as we move. I also want to go back to a situation that you spoke of earlier, Mr. Harris, in that you said that, let me see if I get the name of that little island right, Ankoko.
Ankoko, yeah.
Ankoko. Venezuela basically gobbled up that piece of land through their mighty means, I must say. Just in a situation where Russia want to gobble up Ukraine in terms of the mightier means. If Mr. Putin, I'm just asking a very direct question here, sir. If Mr. Putin was to have his way with the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian land, are you guys in, and that would for sure set a precedent moving forward, where borders are concerned and, you know, other countries just riding roughshod over other countries. Are you guys concerned about the possibility of Venezuela, your neighbor, having gone down that route with Ann Kuku, may take courage by what Mr. Putin did and is doing now and decide, well, Ann Kuku is not enough? Are you guys concerned about that?
You know, that is a real concern. And one of the things that we always say, Ukraine today, what next tomorrow? We are aware when Venezuela has a close relationship with Russia to begin with. We have a relationship with Russia, but not as close as Venezuela. And when Russia landed 2 big fighter jets in Venezuela, it made news around the world. The Americans were saying that Russia has landed in America's backyard and that kind of thing. Last year, Venezuela flew fighter jets over Guyana, a part of Guyana there, and we wrote a letter of protest to the Venezuelan ambassador here. He said he wasn't aware of it. But you know, in these days, where everyone has a smartphone, at the drop of a hat, people take out that phone and record before they do anything else. So we had video footage of the fighter jets flying over. I don't think there was an apology, but it was duly noted. I mean, Venezuela fighter jets can fly unchallenged over Guyana. We can challenge them with anything. Perhaps a slingshot.
So you guys are concerned in terms of something.
Oh yes, that's right. That's right. And I'll tell you something. Those of us who live in Georgetown, the capital, we know that the capital is below sea level. Now you can imagine, and we have some seawalls out there, you know, to keep out the Atlantic Ocean. Venezuela drop a couple of bombs out there and destroy the seawall. That's the end of Georgetown. The end got to fire on a single building. The Atlantic will do the rest. We have our agricultural lands along the same flat coastland here. Salt water will take it over. So you can see what that would mean for food production. I mean, it's as easy as that. Russia has been fighting in Ukraine for 2 weeks or thereabout. Venezuela, 1 bomb, 10 minutes. That's it.
So you guys are living on the edge over there, as it were.
Yeah.
We're making a little light of it here because, you know, laughter.
No, but it's true. It's true.
That is very serious matters that you're raising.
It's true. That's the frightening thing. I mean, it's a reality that we always look at, and that is why we have gone to the World Court. A couple of years ago, we decided, perhaps I need to back up. From 1966 onward, there was a process they called the good officer process, where somebody was there mediating between Guyana and Venezuela. But that was always happening. The dispute did not move. It didn't go anywhere. So when Maduro, by decree, said, look, this is, not going anywhere and all of that. We said we will go to court, to the World Court. Maduro says the court has no jurisdiction. The court ruled that indeed it had jurisdiction to hear the matter. And Maduro said, well, we will not recognize your decision. Now, you see where they're going. You have a country refusing to accept the decision of the World Court, of which Venezuela is a signatory. So, I don't know. It's worrying, but we are hoping to have what you call justice on our side.
Yeah. Hoping beyond hopes.
Yeah.
Someone is making a comment via the live, and I just want you to comment on it. Didi Easter writes, given the current oil situation created by Russia and Ukraine conflict, Guyana now, that person is suggesting, is in a unique position to renegotiate the terms and conditions laid out by ExxonMobil that I spoke of before. And that person is suggesting further, time to bring back the oil executives around the bargaining table so that Guyana could benefit a little, especially in the wake of that conflict. Your thoughts?
Back in, 2016 or thereabout, we said to Exxon, no, in the first place, when we did not expect anybody to find oil, the government said, oil exploration, you will give us 1% if you find anything. It's like you walking in the backyard. I know I don't have gold or anything in my backyard, but I tell you, if you find gold, give me a 1%. When you do find gold, the agreement is for 1% only. So the new government was able to get 2% and the royalty. Now, the person is saying renegotiate. Back then, the Exxon said to us, look, this contract that we have here, we're quite happy with it. It has, I can't remember how many years more this had. We will just step up our drilling and work as fast as we could and get out as much oil as we could and then come back to you. The present government, when it was in opposition, said it would renegotiate. It is not renegotiating anything. And for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier, Exxon is a big power. And not that it would do it, but if Exxon gets crazy and says, the hell with it, I'm going to block all those holes and go away. Guyana, first of all, will have to find other explorers. And those people are going to be suspicious of Guyana the way we treat. It happened with us at nationalization of bauxite, and we never recovered. They decided we're not going to invest in bauxite because when it gets going, the government is going to take it away. So that could happen. But Exxon is not prepared to renegotiate that contract, and it's not prepared to budge. Yes, it's going to give you a little token here. It might build a play field there. It might give you a couple of scholarships here and there on the side. But so to the viewer, I understand. But the contract, as far as Exxon is concerned, is non-negotiable. And our government is afraid to buck Exxon. You're afraid to go and challenge Exxon. And one of the offshoots, as I did mention to you, is that Exxon is strong enough to even topple governments.
Just give us an idea. You don't have to be correct to the T, but give us an idea in terms of the amount of years that contract with ExxonMobil was signed for as to their operations in Guyana. Just an idea.
Mm-hmm. This present contract is for 30 years. Am I right? 30, I think it's 30 years.
Okay.
The first one with the 1%, I don't remember exactly, was Exxon said that they could have just stayed with it, worked fast, and get out as much oil as they could. So we're in a bind. We have to accept our 14% at this stage. We can't call the shots. We can't say what you do with the oil or not. And in any case, the international community is so powerful. Venezuela has one of the largest reserves of oil, and Venezuela can't sell our oil. We have thousands of Venezuelans that have crossed the border and are now resident in Guyana. They have been running, you know, they talk about poverty in Venezuela with all the oil wealth and what have you. If we had control and we wanted to be the big bad dog, the same thing could have happened with us. You have your oil and you drink it because the international community could shut you down. You know, so it's not that we are in control.
Thank you very much for that additional point in terms of the conditions that you guys operate on the ExxonMobil is concerned, that US-based company. Another person, we're gonna take a break in just a while, Mr. Harris, but let me just take another comment here and we'll see if you can plug in some of your thoughts re this comment. Another comment coming from John Blanchard. John Blanchard is saying Guyana's personal income tax is better than ours in Dominica. The VAT, he says, is just about the same, 14 and 15%. However, income tax in Guyana is much less than us in Dominica. He continues by writing that the tax threshold in Dominica is 30,000 EC as opposed to 65,000 in Guyana. In Guyana, he continues, income tax after 65,000 is 28%, up to 130,000 EC. If your chargeable, yes, let me make that right. If your chargeable income is more than 50,000 in Dominica, you fall in 35% tax bracket. Ends by saying, what that means, Guyanese will have more disposable income than us in Dominica. I know we're kind of veering off on some figures, but I don't know if you mind comment on his comment.
Yeah. With those figures, he's right. He is right. We would have a little more disposable income. But I don't know about the prices. Can the disposable income buy some of the goods? You know, you might have cheaper goods there. And therefore, with your fewer dollars, you can take home more goods. So that's one of the reality. He is right. And we are asking for an even higher tax threshold. We're pushing for that. But that's it. Our minimum wage is, what's a minimum wage? About 70,000 Guyana dollars, which works out to 300 US or about 500 EC dollars. Am I right? That's our monthly minimum wage. With 500 EC dollars a month, I don't know. The Dominicans may feel that they're better off. I don't know. I know in Guyana, it don't go far because rent, by the time you pay your bills, that's gone.
True. I agree with you. Someone is making someone is writing here. He says that, that is David Joseph is writing. Is it that ExxonMobil is not mobile, meaning they can't move out of Guyana?
Yeah. Well, oil is a sweet, sweet thing. And with the number of oil finds, and they seem to be finding oil every 2 months, they're not going to run and leave that oil well, especially at this time when people are saying that the future of oil is threatened because you have electric cars, you have solar power, you have wind power, you have a big fuss about global warming and all of that. So they are going to sit there and milk whatever oil they can get for whatever money they can get for as long as they could. Yes, tell my friend they're not mobile. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Let me, yes, I was saying, yes, indeed, they are not mobile in truth, because as you said, the oil is sweet.
Yeah.
Let me, on behalf of the many persons viewing and listening here, thank you very much. Before we go, I promise you an hour with us, and the hour is upon us. I'm a stickler for time, so time is time. But before we go, there's a situation that you mentioned in your previous comment where some little protest action broke out outside of the Russian embassy. Can you just give us a little more detail in that before we ask you for your wind-down comments?
Yes. A group of people, a group of what we call civil society people, decided to object to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Some of them were prominent citizens. One of them was the publisher of a newspaper. Another one headed the telephone company here until he retired or resigned, you know, prominent people. So they went outside the Russian embassy to protest because, let's face it, the small man protesting, people rarely take notice unless he decides that, you know, behave bad, as they say. The professionals would just decide. I'm getting a feedback. The professionals would attract more attention.
Mr. Harris, just hold on a while. Someone signed there called Craig. Master Tech, can you delete that for us, please?
Rarely take notice unless he decides that, you know, behave bad, as they say.
All right, let's take a musical break. Let's see if we can rectify that. We'll be back in just a second. All right, let's take a short break. Go back.
The professionals would attract more attention.
Just hold on a while. All right, thank you very much. I think we rectified that situation where someone was basically talking over you, Mr. Harris. Just continue on the line. You will continue to read the protests, and then we'll ask you for your final comments. Thank you.
Yes, I am saying that when ordinary people protest, they generally do so in a certain manner, and people expect that, you know, some of them would actually become rowdy and violent, but nobody takes notice. When the hoity-toity decides to protest, you know, the world sits up and takes notice, you know. We've seen it in the case of the US. They got changed when some of the prominent citizens decided to join marches and all of that. Well, it was the same with that protest. Some prominent people decided to go outside the Russian embassy, and the Russian ambassador called in 3 of the leaders and had a talk with them. I don't know what that talk was about.
All right, well, thank you for bringing us up to date with that situation as it went down in Guyana. Any final comments as we start to bring down that conversation in terms of the situation that is unfolding in Guyana? We spoke with you this afternoon, looking at the war as it is unfolding through the lens or eyes of Guyana. And so what are some of your final comments you'd want to leave with this in public, sir?
What I would say, you know, I am a kind of a pacifist. I don't like people getting hurt. And what I would like to see is an end to the war. I'm not worried about the refugees fleeing and all of that. Those are people who could afford the money perhaps to join or get transportation to flee. I'm worried about the sick. I'm worried about the elderly and all of those who can't move. And somebody sent me a video clip about the Black orphans in Ukraine. Now, in any society where you have mixed races, you're going to get mixed children. So some Black people intermingled with white people. And I saw these children. And I read that the mothers decided to give them up because they were Black, because she didn't want her perhaps white husband to know that she had a Black child and all of that. So there is this woman in Canada who's looking after them. Things like that affect me, you know. These are children, no fault of theirs that they're here, but that's the reality. I hope the war ends and life in Ukraine goes back to what it was.
Right, Mr. Harris, I wanted to thank you very much for on behalf of the listeners and viewers this afternoon. There's much more we can go on in terms of the discussion, but unfortunately, they say all good things must come to an end. Yes, indeed, it was indeed a discussion. Thank you very much, sir. Let us keep that line of communication open so that if anything happens in Dominica, please feel free to contact me and vice versa.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Do you remember? Last Tuesday, said I hope you remember, yes. Do you remember? Last Friday, not a lot. All as a weapon, because the sun is ready. We never fired the bullets, oh no. Oh, we are dying. We never started a fire, oh no. Oh, we are burning. Do you, yeah, yeah. Do you remember, yeah, yeah. Do you remember Black Tuesday? I hope you remember. Do you remember Black Friday? Do you remember? Do you remember Black Tuesday? I hope you remember, yes. Do you remember Black Friday? La, 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 la. Do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember? Because some brothers in a hustle. Because some brothers in a ditch. Oh, no teacher. Some brothers see some truth. Did I hear the voice of Jah? It's calling me like the wilderness. Lord, did I hear the voice of Jah calling? And it's calling me like the wilderness. Oh yeah, Jah is calling on for hunger, thirst, I can see the walls. For blessings, He is so high and mighty to push it perfect on me. That's not solution. The evil shepherd is calling now for children. Are you listening? Did I hear the voice of Jah? All right, again, Dominicans, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for being part and parcel of the Civic Vibes program. Each and every Sunday afternoon, let's give you a musical break, as it were, as we're about to get into the next segment of the program right here on Civic Vibes. First segment, I must say, was very informative. We had Mr. Adam Harris, a former journalist out of Guyana, putting in perspective from the Guyana perspective, that is, how they are coping as this war that is between Russia and Ukraine is unfolding at this time. So yes, we are about to go into the next segment of our program. Again, it's another very interesting segment. And to take us through that next segment, we have no other than a very formidable lady, I must say, the name of Mrs. Caroline David Graves. You have heard her before. She's no stranger to CV Vibes. And so this afternoon, we're talking to Mrs. Graves for just a bit. Again, I want to reiterate the point. If you have young persons living with you, if you know of some young persons, your relatives, please share that information with them, share the live, because what Mrs. Graves is about to dispense here this afternoon is particularly tailored for young persons in Dominica and in the region, and yes, even further field. So without further ado, let me see if I can go and make contact with our second guest for this afternoon program. This is Caroline David Graves. A special good afternoon to you, my dear. How are you? Welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. And you?
I am doing very well. Thank you for inviting me to appear on your show. I would like to start by, I know your audience is probably wondering who this lady is, but I want to start off by just saying something to every Dominican that's listening and say, bonne journée toute Dominicaine et famille. I once was around a lot of people who spoke Patois, but over the years, I've gotten rusty.
Okay. That's good. That's good with this group. At least you still have some of that in you, right?
Yes, dialect. I do. Somehow I am unable to get off to have my video show up. Not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, that is what I just got to realize, that video is not up and running. We're not seeing you. We're hearing you loud and clear. We're not seeing you. Can we just, do you want us to take a little break so that you can try to rectify that?
Let me try again. Here we go.
Oh, that's it. Much better. Much better. Okay, much better. In terms of just, going through a small bio of the lady that you see now, her name is, as I said before, is Mrs. Caroline David Graves. She has a master's in public administration and has worked 18 years in that field of human subjects research as a regulatory specialist and certified instructional review board manager, right? Also has a master's of education in mental health, counseling, and is a board certified belief therapist and Christian counselor. Originally from Antigua and Barbuda, she now resides in Dallas, Texas. Though she lives in the United States, she's still very much concerned about, has a vested interest in the welfare of the Caribbean. So without further ado, again, a special good afternoon to you, Mrs. Graves, and welcome.
Thank you.
I did a little introduction of myself a while ago, but for the persons who have not seen you or known you before, can you just go a little more in detail as to that short introduction I gave? Thank you.
Yes, you introduced me as someone who's been involved in human subjects protection, and that is basically ensuring that when clinical research studies are done, that individuals who participate in those studies are protected, risk are minimized to the greatest extent possible, and it's possible for people to participate in clinical trials. That's before drugs and devices and other regulated products make it to the market. And so I'm involved in that. I'm also involved in counseling. The research part of what I do is something that I happened into when I went to the internship for my first master's. I was given a project and they did not know what to do with it. They said, give it to the intern. And so it was a national research project. We ended up being the highest enrolling site. Just a lot of good things happened with that project, and I fell in love with research. However, my passion is counseling in mental health, something that most of our Caribbean islands are not very welcoming of, but it's very needed, especially now. Before I left Antigua, I was involved in quite a number of youth and civic organizations. And so my heart, even though I am in the US and I'm working, my heart remains at home, not just for Antigua, but for the Caribbean and very closely, especially to the OECS islands.
And so I took note that you love that civic vibes, you love that civic-minded discussion. And so I want to thank you again for coming on to Civic Vibes. That is the platform to discuss everything about, elderly, whatever it is, to make the human journey here, this side of life. Civic Vibes has been trying its very best to add value to this mission. So again, thank you for coming on. As I said in my preamble to our discussion, I ask persons with young persons to ask them to come around that discussion table this afternoon. Here this afternoon, after you exhausted this conversation with me here this afternoon and listening, the young people in particular, they should have been treated in the best way this afternoon. So whenever I speak to you, Mrs. Graves, I get that, and I'm talking about personal experience with you. Whenever we speak, I get that kind of wish to move on. I get that motivating aspect of it coming through. So I know this afternoon there will be some kind of invitation. I received from some persons out receiving as well. In terms of starting up the conversation this afternoon, exactly, because I know you can question them, exactly do you want to start this evening's conversation?
Would you repeat that again for me, please? It came through garbled.
Yes, I was just saying that exactly where do you want to start our conversation this afternoon? In that you can start anywhere, but in relation to the young people, that is where I would really want to start and exactly starting.
Yes. One of the things that I have come to realize is that as Caribbean countries, we don't seem to be doing enough to encourage our young people to develop and grow, to participate in nation building, to become entrepreneurs, to just develop in their own right. Before I left home, I was very much on the path to wanting to return and go into politics, maybe in tourism, because I love the Caribbean and I always want to present us very well to the rest of the world. But in my generation, and I don't know if it still exists, and maybe to some degree, that when we leave home and we get an education, sometimes the path back is very difficult. And that was the case for me. I tried several times. You mentioned that I have 2 master's degrees. Those degrees did not really come because I wanted to remain away from home for a long time. They came because there was difficulty coming back to get a job. And we often hear about brain drain. And I am a product of that. We leave, we get educated, but we have difficulty returning back home. And if we do, we're being funneled into professions that are not in line with what we studied, with our expertise. We are either asked to teach, either asked to go into some type of governmental office, either maybe go into something tourism, or if we're ingenious enough, we may go into some cottage industry or just some entrepreneurial activity. Well, that was not the case for me, so I remained out. And I think I speak for a lot of young people. Move forward to today. The world is changing very rapidly. And I'm sure that we have seen since COVID, just a lot of changes. On the ground, I am hearing that there are lots of young people not knowing what to do. They are unemployed. People are graduating high school. They have no jobs. They do not know where to go, what to do. The prospect of going off island and studying is not available to everyone. And this is nothing new to Caribbean nationals, and perhaps very prevalent in Dominica, where unless you support the ruling party, you do not get scholarships to go off island and study. So what happens in a situation like that? We have people who end up being frustrated, people who end up being underutilized, not enough jobs for people to go around. Then we have initiatives like, from CARICOM, where individuals can travel freely to other CARICOM states and gain employment. But each island has that similar problem. So sometimes it's very difficult to travel to another island. And if you do, the life that you live, unless you happen upon some stroke of luck or you're particularly skilled in teaching, in nursing, in one of the traditional professions, you're not gainfully employed, then you may have to go into something to do with tourism. You may have to go into something to do with caring for the elderly, cleaning homes. And so with that talent and so much promise in young people, what are Caribbean governments doing to inspire our young people so they can dream, they can achieve those dreams? And even if they're not going off island, they can study from home. There is just so much flowing through my head right now. I think about the Citizen by Investment program. And I'm like, when I think that CIB, I'm thinking Caribbean Basin Initiative. Where did that go? There is so much funds that funneled through our islands, at least the countries that participate in the CBI program. And it's anybody's guess where that money goes and what it's used for. I know there, like in Antigua, there's a university that people can go to. I know in Grenada, like there is a medical school. There is one in Antigua. I'm not sure if I know, I can't remember the name of the university right now, but they had moved to Dominica. I don't know if they're still there. They taught people computer. Ross University. Yes. Ross, I'm not sure if they're still in Dominica. Just some of those initiatives, if we had them continuing, people could better themselves, become gainfully employed. And another thing too also is companies are growing and they need individuals for customer service. When we look at places like India and Sri Lanka and several other places around the world, those people are gainfully employed being customer service reps for large US companies. And the Caribbean islands being so close, I don't see that as a market that the governments are breaking into, and that could be very lucrative. I know in some instances, people are breaking into like the gambling industry. There's some with insurance, but then there is still so much that could be tapped into that individuals can write home, work, be gainfully employed, and sometimes from the comfort of their homes. So with all of that, I'm not sure if there are any questions that you have developed in your mind to ask me, but just there's just so much that I see not happening. And it really pains my heart to see a lot of our young people just not doing anything really, just wasting their lives away.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Mrs. Grace, for your statements. We want to make that conversation practical in nature, in that we realize some of the problems that big in Caribbean countries. What would you, Mrs. Grace, what would you tell, would you show, how would you encourage or try to motivate a young person, bearing in mind they want to keep it practical? I have a number of persons in kind of Antigua, St. Vincent, Barbados, and Lucia, region. They don't have the opportunity, for example, to go to, let's say, college. So they left, let's say, high school, even primary school, and they are just there, wanting to do something to benefit themselves, lives. What would you tell that person that they are just there in a state of limbo, I call it, is to go or if it's to come? You start to motivate that person to get whatever life have there for them, and how to be able to tap into that energy so that their lives could be meaning to them.
Mm-hmm. The first thing I would say is to take an inventory of yourself. What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that drives you? What goals have you set for yourself? What dreams did you have as a child? When you were growing up, what are some of the things that you said that you would want to become? And which one of those is closest to who you are now? Sometimes as Caribbean nationals, when we think of people or who we want to become, we often think of professions like law, medicine, education, and those things are good. But if we're stuck, we need to look around and see what's there. One of the things that I find is dying is that the trades are. People are more concerned about making quick money. They're concerned about probably leaving their islands and moving elsewhere, maybe going to North America and Canada or Europe. The farming, I know with hurricanes coming through, sometimes with crops not making it, and that is a difficult industry at times. Sometimes it seems as if it's almost impossible. But getting together, say in groups, say for instance, in Roseau, there are groups of people who want to do something like an internet cafe, or they want to make TikToks, just kind of talking young people ease now. That's something they can get together and do. But overall, just for encouragement, just for inspiration, just to move someone along, is to find out what your passion is and pursue it. It may be unconventional, but pursue it anyway.
So you're talking about at least the first step I'm getting from you, that the young persons out there who may feel stuck right about now, at least look within. That's what you're saying. Look within, find out where and what that passion is. Mm-hmm. And then that at least is a place to start from.
Yeah, there is something also I want to add to that. And this may be very controversial, but I have known it to be true. In the Caribbean, and maybe in a large part, more developed countries also, we tend to be bound by political parties. We tend to be bound by whom our grandparents voted for and the ones before voted for. and we are adamant that certain political parties should be in power. But when we look at what the ruling or the governing party is doing, they're not doing anything to help the process of development, not much to help the process of nation building, not much to help the process of citizenry and patriotism, not much to involve young people in what goes on. Across the Caribbean, I see like a grab happening where individuals who become ministers of government and prime ministers, they're in it for the money. They're in it to see how wealthy they can get, how much they can reach the ones around them. And everyone else is like, whatever we feel to throw at you at election time so we can sustain that vote, that's what we'll do. But the rest of the time, don't look to us for anything. We'll give you promises, but we won't fulfill them until next time around. We know you have a need, we'll meet it. So for young people, I would encourage you to look around and see who is invested in you, who is invested in your future. The time has come for us to stop looking at political party. The time has come for us to stop looking at ourselves as just citizens of a particular island. We are Caribbean citizens, and we have to start looking at ourselves that way. What is going to move the Caribbean forward? The world is I would want to say it's getting smaller, but it's still very big. And in order to compete in today's environment, we cannot see ourselves as just Dominica or St. Kitts or Grenada or Trinidad. We have to see ourselves as an economic bloc. OECS is good. CARICOM is good. But what I have seen since childhood is that a lot of the initiatives have failed. They have not fulfilled the terms of agreements. Individual countries have asked for extensions. Those have not been fulfilled. So now that the world is becoming smaller, now that technology is allowing us to do a lot, it's time for young people in the Caribbean to start banding together and asking themselves, how can we move us forward beyond party, beyond people whom we like? How can we elect governments who will invest in us and help us to move forward? And I think that is that is a very critical area also that young people need to be paying attention to. They just have to be bold and move beyond whatever barriers have been set up. If not, it's going to continue.
Mrs. Graves, talking about barriers, these young people making some kind of meaning of life. Let me give you a very clear experience that has been going on for years now. And you touched on it earlier, I just want to elaborate on it. There's this notion in Dominica, and I guess it resonates around the region, that, and I'm speaking politically now, my mother voted a political party, my grandmother voted a political party, my family voted a particular way, and so it is sort of, sometimes it is said and sometimes it is not said. But there's this inclination for the young person now that we're speaking to directly this afternoon to fall in line as it, even if that falling in line does not, as you alluded to earlier, does not cut it for them. They cannot see their way out. But because of some reasons or certain factors, that they are forced to go in that direction. right here in Dominica, there are certain young people that if they were to make an independent decision, they would not have put an X or a cross, whatever you want to call it, by a political candidate slash the party, because they know deep down when they go deep into the recesses of their consciences, they know deep down that they have not seen that level of hope, that level of outlook, good outlook out there for them to say, okay, that political party, that political group is looking after my interests as a young person. They are putting the enabling environment in place for me to thrive. They are not seeing that. But because of that pressure, sometimes family pressure, sometimes political pressure, sometimes economical pressure, whatever it is, they are forced to go down that road and basically put a people to sort of make policies to govern their lives that they know consciously are not benefiting them. What would you say to these people in terms of their mindset?
Sometimes experience is the best teacher. And so I'll speak from my experience first. I grew up in a very poor family. And at the time, my parents supported the opposition. For me, I supported the ruling party. I was a member of the youth arm. I did debates. I traveled, I represented, I debated, I advocated, because I felt at that time the ruling party was the one that represented me best. I went against what my parents believed. I went against how they voted, and I did my own thing. That was a very bold thing to do, because you don't go against your family to vote for anyone, because they're going to take you down the path of this person did this and that person did this. And you remember when your grandfather needed some money, this person helped, remember this. And so as Caribbean people, we tend to take gratitude to a degree that it becomes painful for us. And so I decided to make that step. And I came to learn in time that my choice was not the best. And so I have in the last few years reverted to supporting the opposition, because they best represent what would move not just me personally, but the nation forward. And that is something I will say unashamedly, and I will stand in any platform and say that, because this is not about me. This is about the Caribbean. This is about my island. This is about my people. This is about moving us forward so we can compete into the 21st century, and compete in a way that benefits us all. So for the young person today who you know in your conscience how you should vote, be bold. Your parents will understand. I know some people get thrown out of their homes because of that. And for those situations, I would recommend that you think carefully about what resources you have available to you and what it would mean. But if you must, please make the choice that will benefit you the most. And when I say you, not just you personally, but you as a people, what would benefit us the most?
Yes, indeed. And I love that striking experience that you give, in that a lot of persons are or were in that situation like once upon a time. Let me give you again another practical example of the situation that we are facing in, speaking from a Dominican context. And I know, because the political situation that goes on, it resonates across the region. A matter of fact, I'm kind of getting the sense now that the political parties in the different countries, there's that sort of, it is not in word, it is not spoken, but in their action. There's this kind of coming together of these parties, be it opposition parties or parties in power, to sort of cement their position so that what happens in Dominica, it sure well resonates and happens as well in Antigua and region. And Dominica Labour Party has been in power in Dominica for 22 years now. Took over the reins of power from United Workers' Party from year 2000. As I said, we want to keep the conversation very, very practical so that everybody, especially the young persons, can understand the predicament where we are as a people, and obviously at the end of the discussion, for some solutions to move out that grass, as it were. From 2000, Mrs. Graves, Dominica Labour Party took over the reins of power. We are now in 2022. So that means we have had at the helm, politically speaking, that is, a party, a group of people, 22 years. The current leader has been there from 2004. So we're talking about 17 years.
Wow.
Now, where the young people are concerned in Dominica, for example, let us just say, I'm just using some figures there now to drive home that point. Let us just say a young person was 15 years old when this government took over the reins of power. Let's say they were 15. 15 years, you can kind of starting now to understand what is happening. So the age of voting is 18, but I think at 15 years, you can start to rationalize things from there. 15 years that a young person was. Today, that person is now what? 15 and 22, that is what? 37?
You're 37, yeah, you're right.
37. So imagine a young man, a young woman who would have been 15 years then. Today, they are 37 years old, striking 40. And that person, that individual, not have known anything else than that type of leadership. And I'm not going to put butter in my wine, as it were. I'm not going to mix my words here, because when I speak, they are well thought out. Dominica Labour Party that Rosie Douglas brought to prominence in Dominica, that it is not the same Dominica Labour Party with the same ideologies, with the same philosophies that all shall eat. No. If Rosie Douglas was still around, maybe this country would have been on a different path, politically speaking. Rosie Douglas died in office. Pierre Charles died as well in office. And we now end up with this man who sits at the helm as Prime Minister, called Roosevelt Skerrit. Roosevelt Skerrit came into power, with the ideals, especially where the young persons are concerned, in that there was this over-excitement. A matter of fact, one of the chants was, give the young man a chance, in that now it was young people's chance. A lot of young persons really lined up to Roosevelt Skerrit back then, being 31 years old, taking up the reins of power in Dominica as Prime Minister. It was thought that he would have looked out in particular for the young people just coming out of college as a teacher. And so there was this hype around him. And lo and behold, I must say, after 17 years, the dreams, the aspirations, the hope of some of these young persons who were, let's say 15 years back then, kind of start to rationalize things politically. These dreams, these aspirations were dashed. They are in the striking range now of 40 and above. They are full-blown adults now. And so not being able to be part of an environment that could have their dreams be a reality, the raw deal, the raw situation in the ground. You have a lot of broken people in that age range from, let's say, 25 to 45 now. You see that age range, Mrs. Graves in Dominica, you have a lot of broken people walking around. Especially, I must add, if they have not been supporting the status quo. And so it's on that premise, I want you to understand what we are facing in Dominica and to just give these people a word, as it were, so that whatever needs to be done, they can do to come out of that political predicament.
Mm-hmm. You know, there is a saying that power corrupts, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And Dominica is a microcosm of what it appears is happening across the Caribbean. Individuals intent on going into government to make a difference become easily corrupt when they see the potential to enrich themselves and greed takes over. And I have seen that happen in quite a number of our prime ministers, our PMs, where they went in with the promise of making a difference and they totally switched. Now, true, promises are made by politicians and people trust that those promises will be fulfilled when they're in office. But sometimes there is not enough time to make those changes, or they need time to make those changes. They just do not happen overnight. So it's good to understand that the process of promise to realization takes time. However, 22 years is a very long time to make good on promises. I do not know Mr. Skerritt personally, but based on what I've seen across the Caribbean and in Antigua, we have our own issues as well with our prime minister. I have seen where a sort of a dictatorial, if it does not go my way, it does not go. I've seen that happening. Then we have initiatives like the citizenship by investment. That's a lot of money flowing, where individuals who want to scale under what they may need, the immigration authorities in America, in Canada, in Europe, in order to conduct businesses or to be seen as legitimate, are being directed to our shores. And so to make that happen, you can imagine that there is money that's being passed under the table. We need to expose things for what they are. We need to speak truth. And I believe that that has happened in a number of situations. And so we have individuals moving from good intentions to being caught up in situations that feed their greed. And so what happens is that the good intentions get abandoned. And then we also have a culture where as a people, we tend to stamp what these people are doing over and over again. So there becomes this issue of entitlement. So individuals in power believe they are entitled to what comes along with it. And as the electorate, as the population, we just decide, okay, we're just going to rubber stamp because election times, I'm getting my home paid off. I'm getting my car paid off. I'm getting money. I'm getting this. The roads are being fixed, buildings are being painted. You see movement, and that false promise calls us to over and over again vote people who really do not have our interests at heart. They speak very well, they sound very good, but at the end of the day, that's all that is, words. Someone says that we teach who we are, we teach what we know, but we replicate who we are. And if we, as the population of voting in people who repeatedly pillage, who repeatedly break promises, who repeatedly do not deliver, we need to examine ourselves. They are not the problem, we are.
I love that you ended on. We are, and in that vein, how do we now come together to correct, fix, / rectify that kind of?
I go back to we need to stop thinking of ourselves as just Dominicans and Antiguans. We need to start thinking of ourselves as Caribbean nationals, Caribbean citizens. Dominica is not going to survive by itself. Neither is Antigua, neither is St. Kitts, Grenada, none of those. Most of our islands have chosen to become independent. And in that independence, we do not have the economic backing of England as we did. And so left to our own devices, we are self-destructing. We need to come together, not in the way OECS or CARICOM was being practiced over the years. We need to come together recognizing that though different, we are the same. We all are in the same canoe, and if we don't paddle well enough, and if we don't paddle in unison and in sync, we're going to drown or we're going to go in circles. So we have to start thinking of ourselves as Caribbean citizens. To move us forward, we make the choice in Dominica to elect people who will do that for us. In Antigua, in St. Kitts, in St. Vincent, wherever we are, we need to start electing individuals who have shown, not just by their words, but in the lives that they live, they have demonstrated a commitment to country above self, to people above self, to nation above self. We elect those people who will move us forward. And I want to say something else to the churches. Many churches, the church is very influential in the Caribbean. And for the most part, many who stand in pulpits every Sunday are afraid of the ruling party. But they need to understand that as churches, they're not beholden to the ruling party. They are beholden to a higher power, and they're directing the lives of people. And so, no, you don't tell people how to vote, but you tell people, vote your values. Vote the things that will bring the greatest benefit. Those things are not preaching politics, but they're teaching people how to vote in ways that will bring about the betterment, not just of island, not of just of self, but of region. And that's how we need to start voting. Those are the things we need to start looking at. I remember when I grew up in Antigua, I was chosen along with many other young people around the Caribbean at the age of 14 to be a part of what was called a youth quake. We all converge in Anguilla. And still today, some of my very dearest friends from Dominica, St. Kitts, Anguilla, just all over the Caribbean, we met there. And we were taught how to be good Caribbean citizens. From there, I think my love of our region developed. And as we're talking about Dominica, Dame Eugenia Charles was one lady that I looked up to. That lady to me represented what every Caribbean child or girl would want to aspire to. In later years in college, I was selected to be a part of a group, Future Global Leaders of the Caribbean. Those initiatives of some of the things that our governments can continue so that we are constantly growing individuals who are civic minded, growing individuals who are interested in good and wholesome governance, growing individuals who see country above self, party above self, working for the betterment of everyone.
Mrs. Graves, I'm absorbing every bit, every word from you this afternoon. It's quite interesting, a conversation thus far. And yes, let me go across to the listening audience because we have a good chunk of persons viewing and also listening to every bit of the conversation we have this afternoon. So we want to thank them very much. And please add your comments, add your suggestion, ask your questions, whatever it is. Mrs. Graves is here. I will try my very best to have you part and parcel of the conversation that we have this afternoon here. Mm-hmm. Mrs. Graves, you touch on a topic that is always passionate to me in terms of the importance and the impact of the church. Whenever this conversation comes up and the church is mentioned, it kind of steer me in a direction to add some points as to what is the real value of church in our society. Where has the church fallen in terms of their responsibility to society? And what can the church do to step up, as it were? And so I will just make one or two points where church, people, when we say the church, or when I say the church, I'm not talking for, I'm talking about people, membership of the congregation. Mm-hmm. Because it is these people, we are these people that make up the church. And good book says, if that church, meaning people, have lost their savor or their saltiness, as it were, then we are no good. Mm-hmm. Some of these organizations, in terms of church people, that have been doing what they have to do, what the good Lord above calls them to do, I want to be the first one to put up my hand and say, thank you, job well done. So continue in vain. As Mrs. Graves said a while ago, we must call out things, we must call out what they are and for who they are, that aspect. Mm-hmm. And yes, in Dominica as well and in the region, there are a number of church-going people, especially those who are in very pivotal positions to guide the people in a particular direction as to the betterment of country. Mm-hmm. And as Ezekiel and the men of old say, alas, unto these men and women sometimes, they are not doing justice to that cause of Christ. Mm-hmm. They have gone astray. They have gone in bed with the politicians, the political elites of the day, and basically they're not being true to their calling. Mm-hmm. And so it is that church that is what Malcolm X said, and also Martin Luther King said, that is the conscience of the nation. That is the heartbeat of the nation. So most times, wherever the church puts its head in whatever direction, that is where most times the people, because we are dominantly, it is said, Christian people in this part. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some of these persons who are behind the cloth, who are dressed up, decked up with the cloth, and they are called spiritual leaders or priests, pastors, popes, whatever it is. I must say, Mrs. Graves, have failed and continue to fail the people. And I want to be very blunt because the times that we're living in, it calls for a level of straight talk, direct talk. In that some of these leaders, the political leaders, they find ways of being in bed with the spiritual people, and they shove monies in their mouths, so that at the end of the day, these so-called spiritual cannot no longer speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mm-hmm. Some of the spiritual leaders find themselves so comfortable with these politicians, in that instead of advising the people, they are now advising the politicians as to how to continue the very deceptive reign over, and the benefit in the process. Yeah. And these so-called men of God, they will come every Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday, whatever it is, and in a very hypocritical way, that is, come to pretend that they love people, they love the flock. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I want to agree with you that there's much more that can be done, because if some of these people were true to their calling, as I said before, our region would be in a better place. Our countries would be in a better position, because it is sad to see that we are just sort of, scrambling over crumbs, as it were, where our countries are, these countries are rich. Dominica, for example, you touch on the CBI program, we'll get there in just a while. Dominica is one country. Antigua, likewise, you are of Antiguan descent. These countries, monies through that program have been pumped in these countries like water is flowing down a river. But for some reason, these monies does not seem to meet the people where they are, in terms of their small businesses, in terms of the family life, in terms of productive employment, in terms of just ways and means to benefit we, the citizens of this country. Mm-hmm. As to where they are, some of us, we don't know. In Dominica, before I hand over back to you, we have this program that the government initiated called the NEP program, Mrs. Graves. The NEP stands for the National Employment Program. That program, when it was conceptualized by the powers that be, well, I don't know if I'm wrong, but I don't think I can be that way off in terms of my explanation of what the program was supposed to be and what it is today. What I understood that program should have been was that a young person, as we said, let's say they left school, between time of trying to find a job or getting a job, they would have been in that state of, quote unquote, just being there. So that NEP program in Dominica, it was to sort of be that bridge to gap that process. That was the mantra of that. But lo and behold, that program, I can tell you, Mrs. Graves and the Dom watching, they know fully well, consciously, that program has not been true to its mission. In that, again, the politicians now took that program and basically made it into a political vote buying, vote engineering machine. And so if you are not, in Dominica's case, red, because it's the red party that initiated that, if you're not red, you cannot be part and parcel of that program. You cannot benefit from that program. And from the inception, it was, in my mind, it was young persons that should have been the priority for that program, in that it was just a stepping stone to bigger, brighter, and better things to come. But now the program has doubled down into something that is irrecognizable, in that you have adult women, 45, 50, 60, some of them elderly people on that program doing what? Trying to make a living. I am not in no way, shape, or form trying to break down anybody in terms of what they do for their living. But the reality is that that program was never cut. It is still not cut for these people in terms of age, in terms of experience. Persons with their bachelors, persons with their degrees, you're sending them to a program of that nature. You have wives that's supposed to be looking out for their family. Husbands, big men, some of them ready to go home to their maker. They are on the side of the roads in Dominica, cutting grass, Mrs. Graves, cutting grass. And as to a time frame or a set time to be removed from that program to something else, there's nothing in sight. And so for some people, that NEP program that started off as a noble idea to get young persons from A to point B, it is now stuck with some middle-aged people that have it now as part of their normal way of life. Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing else, or there's very little else for even these adults to get some kind of meaningful employment. Mm-hmm. Because the leadership of these countries, they have failed and continue to fail our people. Mm-hmm. They have failed. The lacking of vision, no innovative investments, no manufacturing, nothing. Young people these days, they are very tech savvy. You put a phone, an iPad, a computer, whatever it is before a young person, and before you know it, they manipulate that even better than the maker. There's nothing in that department. Save and Set, there's a company in Dominica called Clear Harbor, an American company that came to Dominica, and for some persons, it is the saving grace, it is the life-saving grace that some of these young persons can go to and, you know, do whatever there and gain some kind of employment. But from a grassroots level, from the country's level, there's no very little indigenous initiatives that this government has come up with to benefit the people. And the list goes on and on and on. I can continue to talk till thy kingdom come. And again, that's why I asked you the question before, the all-important question. What can we do as a people to relieve ourselves from that kind of mediocrity mentality where our livelihoods are concerned?
Brother Lofty, you mentioned a lot. And I want to start with the church. You mentioned, you spoke about the church, and we do have to make a distinction. There may be people in the listening audience who are of other faiths. They may be Muslim or, you know, Hindu or just another, of another faith. And as with all faiths, there is a point of inclusion and there is a point of exclusion. But I believe from what I've read and experienced that it does not matter whether we're Christian or we are another religion. We are to spur each other onto good works, and we look for the good, the general good. As Christians, the majority of us, what we see in churches is sometimes such a great diversion from what Jesus intended when he built his church. There are many people who are in pulpits today. They preach from the same Bible that you and I read, but their hearts are far from God. Jesus himself said, with their mouth they praise me, but their hearts are far from me. You know, in the Bible, Jesus, the people that he really got angry with and he spoke most terribly of were the pastors and the preachers of the day, the scribes and the Pharisees. They kept the law to the nth degree. They made it so difficult to do any work on the Saturday, on a Sabbath, that even Jesus himself They chastised him for healing somebody on the Sabbath. And so we have in our pulpits people with a form of godliness, but denying the power. People who have the ability to preach and represent God in his fullness, but they themselves are corrupt and they do not know how. And they're too afraid to even humble themselves and ask for help. That in itself is corrupt. The other thing is, as we look at that employment initiative, based on how you describe it, it seems as if it was done without forethought. It was done to just pacify or to say we're doing something. I think I briefly remember hearing about it, and it was funded by the government of Venezuela or something. They basically placed some money into it. And sometimes we have to peel back the layers and ask ourselves, if somebody outside is funding an initiative inside of our country, what is the backstory? What is the story behind it? As Caribbean nationals or governments, we have seen a lot of initiatives, a lot of programs put into place, a lot of money spent. But then a few years later, we ask ourselves, whatever became of this program? Whatever became of that program? And one of the things that really undermine the success of programs succeeding and being able to go on to perpetuity is that we still think that we have to go to politicians for them to grace us with what we need. We have not yet realized that they are public servants. They work for us. We have the power to determine whether or not they stay in office or whether they leave. But somehow we have been brainwashed to believe that they owe us something. So we go and we say, okay, you know, I voted for you or my daughter, but my daughter's coming back from college and she needs a job. Okay, I'll talk to Richard down the road, and Richard will have you come in on Monday and they'll sign you up for the program. They'll give you a job. Somebody else, you meet them on Friday night. Hey, you know, I voted for you and I need this. And say, okay, you mean the girl for whatever? Yeah, okay, tell her come Monday morning and we're gonna give her a job. And that's how politicians continue to undermine the initiatives that are set in place. So now you have a program that started off very well, is now all over the place. People are disgruntled, people are without hope. People don't know where to turn because it is not working for who it's supposed to be working for. And then those who should be off of the program and probably phased out into another area of employment or pension or whatever you will, they're still in that program. Lack of governance is a huge issue across the Caribbean. And it's very evident based on how you described it. Again, if we as a people do not hold our government, our representatives responsible, if we do not take the initiative to change our governments when we realize that they've become too greedy and too self-absorbed, and they've developed this sense of entitlement, if we as a people don't do a paradigm shift in realizing that they are public servants, they work for us. They cannot come into public office living with their parents, and then in 2-3 years, they have a multi-million-dollar mansion while we are still sucking salt and drinking water. How did that come about? They are public servants. They are finances, their lives are open to public inquiry. We have the right to investigate. We have the right to know. And these are some of the things that we need to start enforcing as a people, in addition to the X of our votes that are very valuable. We need to stop being so beggy, as we say in Antigua, and stop waiting on politicians to give us handouts to make us feel as if we are only entitled to the little grace or the pittance they can give us, because that is what we deserve. Until we shift, we make that paradigm shift, we will be stuck, hopeless, clueless, and sad to say, many of us, because of these frustrations with what governments are doing with economics, it bleeds over into our personal lives. And so many of us have mental problems because of it. And that is another issue that we need to think about. That's another issue that we need to take care of. And our governments are not doing it. And people need help.
Very, very, very well said, Mrs. Graves. And to agree with you 10% in terms of what you said. We are primarily having that discussion, and I realize it is 6 o'clock already, or after 6. So we will start to wind down in just a bit. But I know based on the feedback that I'm getting here, lots and loads of persons are listening and they're enjoying conversation as far in terms of that very motivating and inspiring conversation we're having. I know we zeroed in the discussion primarily among the young people, the younger set of society that is in our society. But I just want to broaden it just to kind of include as well some of the elderly folks among us. And when I spoke of the sort of doom and gloom situation that permeates through the young people, that gloominess as well tend to permeate among the elderlies as well. In that some of the elderlies, when I visit them, when I hear them speak, when I, engage them, you can hear that level of despair, that level of unsatisfaction in their voice, in that they're saying, Lofty, I spent the last 20 years of my life in a state of dormancy. I should have been there today. Some of them are on the retirement already, as it were. And some of them feel so helpless. And that too is a situation that is, kind of very troubling, because a lot of adults were in the prime of their life, seeing that we had and we still have a government at the helm and governments across the region that is really not true to their oath and really doing what they have to do to benefit the lives of people, then you get that despair falling even and emanating even from the elderlies among us. So, even the elderlies among us, they too, they are feeling the pinch of that kind of malgovernance that most of our region has had for the past 15, 20 years. I every time I speak about governance, there's this guy, Errol Barrow, former Prime Minister of Barbados. His soul rest in peace. This brother, I listened to this brother give a speech once to the Bajan people. And let me tell you something. The takeaway from that discussion to me was, he said, and I'm quoting him now, basically saying that when a leader plans for a country, he should not, or he or she should not be planning for the immediate. As a matter of fact, he said, any leader that is reaping from what they planned is not a good leader. He said, in a nutshell, a good leader, a visionary leader, should be planning for his or her country 20, 25, 30 years down the road, so that when you, that leader, you are long gone, the children, babies in the womb will be adults then. They that should be the recipients of that leader visionary work. And that struck me. And when I lined that up, what we have been witnessing in the region as to innovative leadership, I must call it what it is. We have not been, the leaders in the region have not been true to their calling in terms of leading the people. Because most leaders in the region, they basically, the 5-year cycle, 5-year idea, that is what they're after. So they do what they have to do within 5-year blocks, always trying to be back in power, backs of the people. And it is sad, it is lamentable, but again, it all boils back to the people and what we have to do to eliminate or lessen that kind of a mindset. Because a lot of politicians, they come in office with very lofty, very nice ideas. But as to the executing on behalf of citizenry, it's a totally different kettle of fish. And just as I wind up on that contribution of mine, there's a guy that I follow very closely he's from Kenya. They call him Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba. This guy said, and it is so fitting in our politics in the region. He said in Kenya, in Africa, the people elect the dumbest set of people to represent them because they are quote unquote popular, because they have a little money than, you know, a well-minded person that wants to put themselves up to represent the people. And he suggested that a special type of cleansing, a special type of purging supposed to go into this type of leaders, because when a leader, for example, as you said it before, as you alluded to it before, would know fully well that the office that they're vying for can only provide them that much in terms of remuneration, but they would spend much more to get into that position. Lumumba said, you have to question these people. Why would you come to a $5,000 paying job and spend 30 million to get into that position? He said, people with that mindset, you have to be very wary when these people come to bring you gifts before any elections, because they are in there, not for you, but for themselves, because they know by staying in there, they will not reap the cream of the crop, as it were, and you, the citizenry, will just be getting the crumbs. Mrs. Graves, I know we have had an allotted time for 6. We have gone past 6. So I would just want us now to kind of wind down, as it were, on the conversation, kind of putting now in a ballpark what we spoke of before.
Well, we touched on a lot today. And sometimes when, as Caribbean people, we don't know how to put into words all that we have said or the emotions that go along with them, we sometimes turn to our Calypsonians. And some time ago, Stalin sang a calypso. He talked about the Caribbean man. And I want to end with something that is very true. He sung that, I cannot even remember when, but I know I heard that song as a child. And it says, you try with a federation, the whole thing and in confusion. CARICOM and then CARIFTA, but somehow a smelling disaster. Mr. West Indian politician, I mean, you went to big institution, and how come you can't unite 7 million when a West Indian unity, I know, is very easy if you only rap to your people and them like me. Then he said, you said that the federation was imported quite from England, and you're going to form a CARIFTA with a true West Indian flavor. But since CARIFTA started running morning, noon, and night a hearing, it's just money speech them prime ministers giving. But I say no set of money could form a unity. First of all, your people need their identity. CARICOM is wasting time. The whole Caribbean gone blind. If we don't know from where we're coming, then we can't plan where we're going. That's why some want to be communist, some want to be socialist, and one set of religion to add to the foolishness. Look, a man who don't know his history can't form no unity. How could a man who don't know his roots form his own ideology? And it goes on. And what Stalin, way back then, was saying to us, and so many politicians to present day, is that we need to come together as a people. We need to elect people who are responsible, people who would enact good governance, people who would care about us as a nation, people who would survey the landscape of how the tides are changing in economics, in politics, in sociology, in psychology, in religion, everything that concerns us, with tourism, how that is changing, and change along with the rest of the world so we remain competitive, so our people are cared for, so we are able to produce goods and services that keep people gainfully employed. These are the things that we need in our leaders. And again, not just in Dominica, not just in Antigua, across the Caribbean, we are all singing the same refrain. It's time for a change. And to the senior citizens, the ones who feel hopeless, it's time to get angry. Get angry with what you've been promised over and over again, and you have not been given. Take a chance on somebody else and see what the outcome is going to be. It's time. You owe it to yourselves, you owe it to your communities, you owe it to your island nation, you owe it to us Caribbean nationals, and you owe it to the rest of the world. We can't have these expats coming in and taking us over. We are enslaving ourselves again. And until we change that, we will forever remain enslaved.
True, true. I want to agree with you 110% again. Let me just bless your heart before I ask you for your final closing comments. You know, technology is a kind of a thing, eh? I have found that song that you did a while ago, Black Stallion, entitled Caribbean Man. Yes. So let us take a listen of that number, and then when we come back, I will ask you for your call. We always on this program, by the way, have a call to action segment, because it's true we normally talk the talk. Some of us normally talk a very good talk. But this program, Civic Vibes, we always ask our guests, whoever it is, to try to inspire our people by having them, the listeners now, turn those words or words into action. So when we come back after that break, Mrs. Graves will ask you that to action aspect talk this afternoon. Let's take a little listen. We're going into that song by Black Stallion entitled Caribbean Man. I know Mrs. Graves will be very, very happy to hear that she quoted that.
The private operation, any confusion, Caribbean Man then character, but somehow a spelling disaster. Mr. West Indian publication, I mean you went to a big institution, and how come you can't utilize 7 million? When I West Indian unity, I know it's very easy. If you're going to rap to your people and tell them like me, then it's one race from the same place. I make the same trip on the same ship. So we must push one common intention. It's for a better life in the region. For the woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man, the Caribbean man, Caribbean man. character with a true West Indian flavor. But his character started running. Money noon and night all I hearing. With just money speaks, them prime minister giving. But I say no such a money, but for my unity. First of all, your people need their identity. I'm hungry from the same place that make the same trip on the same ship. So we must push one common intention. It's for a better life, the region, for we woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man. The Caribbean man. Time, the whole Caribbean one time. If we don't know from where we come in, then we can't plan where we going. That's why some want to be communist, rather some want to be socialist, and one that a religion know how to put this foolishness. Look a man who don't know this history, can't fall. How the man who don't know his truth, come with the 90 dollars from the same place, that make the same trip on the same ship. So we must push one common intention, it's for a better life in the region. For we woman and we children, that must be the ambition of the Caribbean man, Caribbean man, Caribbean man.
Indeed, that number was done many, many, many moons ago. Like Ms. Graves said, and in Calypso Arena, a Black Stallion, titled this one, Caribbean Man. Basically, it just put into song exactly some of the things that Mrs. Graves discussed here with us this afternoon. Mrs. Graves, I see you kind of jigging on that one, huh?
Hey, back in the day, I remember dancing in the streets of Dominica to what's it called? The goat skin band, Lapo Cabuit.
Lapo Cabuit, yes.
Lapo Cabuit. On the streets of St. Vincent, the Virgin Islands, St. Lucia, Dominica. I didn't miss a carnival, you know. I used to go to so many of them.
So you're a true Caribbean woman.
Huh?
You're a true Caribbean woman indeed.
I am a Caribbean woman at heart.
Yes, yes, indeed.
I love the Caribbean and I want us to see us thriving,
True.
Not just existing.
True. But yes, Mrs. Graves, again, I want to thank you very much. On behalf of many, many folks viewing and listening to the conversation here we're having, we're about to bring it to a close, as it were. But as I told you before we took that all-important break, Civic Vibes always offers the guests the opportunity to close off on call to action segment. All what we have said this afternoon, very nice words. Yes, we appreciate that. But how now would you want a young person, elderly, adult, somebody out there that, you know, has been and maybe still be facing the issues that we touched on? How would you want that talk to be translated to them so that they can take the necessary action?
Again, look for your passion. Look for what drives you. Survey where you are. Find like-minded people. Work together with them to build something. There is a video, it's on YouTube. It's young Caribbean people issue a powerful call to action. And that video is encouraging young people to become social entrepreneurs, utilizing and harnessing the power of the internet because it's so far-reaching. You can stay in your home in Dominica and you can make money. There's Amazon. There are so many multi-level marketing organizations, so many companies needing customer service. look for those opportunities and gain employment through them. For the older people, examine what has happened in your life over the years. Look at how you have been helped by politicians that you have over and over and over again elected, but realize only empty promises. Get angry and make a change. Everyone, start thinking of ourselves, not from a selfish platform, but from the platform that we are all Caribbean nationals. We are in a boat that's sinking, and unless we pull together, we will sink. We will drown. So we have to work together, form alliances across Dominica and the rest of the Caribbean islands, and see how best we can get out of this doldrum of despair, and how we can get these non-promising or no promising, wealth-seeking, selfish, dictatorial politicians out of the seats that they occupy. That's what we need to do. I'm asking the church to join with the population, the populace, and make that happen. It is not just something that's talk anymore. It's not just something that we can wish for anymore. Our very future, our lives depend on it.
Right, Mrs. Graves, I want to thank you very, very, very much. I know there's much more that can be said here this afternoon, in the interest of time, in the interest of your time, and also this time. So keep it, kind of condense it to that time. So on behalf of all of them, I know all of them would want to thank you very much. What I noticed this afternoon, tell you what I noticed. On your segment in particular, conversation was so riveting in that there were a lot of persons, they were just there absorbing the information. And so after we are done and dusted with that conversation, I know I'll be getting calls from persons telling me, the lady was great, she was inspiring, she was this, she was that. So I know I'm going to get that. So on behalf of them, on behalf of the Civic Vibes team, we just want to thank you for coming on and spending some of your precious moments, your Sunday afternoon with us here this afternoon, social media platform. And we hope to see you sometime very, very soon to discuss something else. So yes, I want to thank you on behalf.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Indeed. All right, I guess you'd want also to shout out some of your antique and passive that are listening at this time.
I know my family is probably listening, some of my high school mates, maybe some of my Dominican friends as well from college, from my youth Quake days. Hey everybody, Sakafit. Hey Antigans, how are you? I don't know, I'm a little overcome with emotion right now. When I talk about the Caribbean, it really touches a chord. We're not just sun, sea, and sand. We're so much more. We are delicate and we're beautiful. And for those of us, tourism has been our mainstay. The reason why we are so beautiful and we're so attractive is because we are aquatic deserts. If you study the desert anywhere, you will find that they have some of the most beautiful flowers, plants, and animals. But like anything, if it's not cared for, if it's not nourished, if it's not treated well, it will become just a shell. We cannot afford for that to happen to us.
Again, thank you very much, Mrs. Graves, for your very succinct presentation this afternoon.
Thank you.
Wish you all the best as you continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, folks, that is it. We want to thank very much those of you who are still there with us. They have just brought the curtains on there as it were. We started off this afternoon, 4 o'clock hour sharp, bang on time. I do each and every Sunday. With a formidable journalist from Guyana, that is Mr. Adam Harris. He spent the better part of that hour, at 4 to 5 hours, right here, and gave us the Guyanese perspective as to the war between Russia and Ukraine at this time. So we from him. So we just want to thank Paris in a very special way, and that he could come on here and the Guyanese perspective, speaking from his profession. He's a journalist by profession. Also, the next segment, we dovetailed into another very interesting segment. We just ended it a while ago. This is Caroline David Graves, Tegan descent, but she lives somewhere up there. The US just ended all important discussion focused primarily on the young people, what these young people among us do in order to see a better way. Yeah. So we thank her very much for coming on this afternoon. Basically, part and parcel civic vibes set up here each and Sunday. So both of them, we want to thank them for time and expertise and their energy in that direction. What is up next week, people? Next week, most likely, like 75%, the chance that is, we'll be going much deeper into the latest breaking news from the US officials and the European countries, whereby they basically give countries in the region an ultimatum. It's either you do or die where CBI programs are concerned. So I'm trying now to put forward with the team of Civic Vibes, a team of people across the region, journalists and like other professionals, to come here next week, Sunday, so that they can go much deeper as to the news that we just heard this week by some of the countries and as well US, basically clamping down week of Russian-Ukraine conflict. They are deciding to clamp down persons who are in receipt of these passports, these CBI passports, or persons who intend to get this passport. So trust me, it's going to be a very interesting discussion next week once everything is out as planned. So on behalf of the Civic Vibes team, I want to say a special goodbye to each and every. Thank you for listening each and every Sunday. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to just play one more song, and that is the song, The Caribbean Man, that we played a while ago as we go out. So guys, see you next week. Thank you very much. Caribbean Man, as we go.
You try with the federation, the whole thing end in confusion. Caricom and then Caribbean, but somehow a spelling disaster. Mr. West Indian competition, I mean you went to big institution, and how come you can't unite 7 million? When a West Indian unity, I know it's very easy. If you only rap to your people and tell them like them is correct. From the same place, I make the same trip, on the same ship. So we must push one common intention, it's for a better life in the region. Oh, woman, and we children, that must be the ambition of the Caribbean man, the Caribbean man, the Caribbean man. peace them prime minister given. But I say no treasure money, but for my unity. Work up all the people need their identity. Like a grain from the same place, that make the same trip on the same ship. So we must push one common intention. It's for a better life, the region, for the woman, and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man. Time, the whole Caribbean one climb. If we don't know from where we come in, then we can't plan where we going. That's when some want to become foolish, rather some want to be socialist, and one better religion go out to the foolishness. Look at man who don't know the history. Yeah, but come the man who don't know history. Come to 1991. From the same place, that make the same trip, on the same ship. So we must push one common intention, if for a better life in the region. For we woman, and we children, that must be the ambition of the Caribbean man, Caribbean man, Caribbean man. The Federation done dead, and Caribbean going to bed. But the cult of Rastafarian spreading through the Caribbean. In Nebraska, Trinidad, in Nebraska, St. Lucia, but to run Caribbean, yes, you getting pressure. If the Rastafari movement spreading, I let it come to Nebraska on, and the politics are good. And it's one race from the same place. That make the same trip on the same ship. So they pushing one common intention. It's for a better life in the